Gorka and Dana Lash. They're all ahead, but first, my open. I, for one, am moving on from fake news. There's a new phrase in town, a new lingo with which to familiarize yourself. Fake laws. That's what I said, fake laws. This is not about taking sides. Whether you are left, right, independent, or agnostic, respect for our laws is essential. They are not fake. We are a nation of laws. Now, Senators Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, ironically, all three eyeing the 2020 presidential run, and the left insist that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, be abolished. The call was wrapped up this week when Harris asserted that ICE is perceived as the modern-day Ku Klux Klan. Take a look as she grills acting director of ICE, Ronald Vitiello.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
Officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception
that puts ICE in the same category as the KKK?
Since when are carrying out the duties of law enforcement akin to acting like a Klansman? Since when are men and women to whom we give badges and guns, who uphold the law and put their lives on the line, considered domestic terrorists? Since when do we persecute people for doing the job the law empowers them to do? Perception is one thing, but laws passed by Congress, signed by the commander-in-chief, are reality. Irrespective of our like or dislike of a law, no one can choose to ignore the law. The law is meant to be followed and enforced. Kamala, you were a prosecutor and attorney general. You enforced the law by prosecuting those who didn't follow it. I doubt you asked the accused about their perception of the law, and I doubt you even cared. In fact, when you ran for Senate, you promised to, quote, combat transnational gangs, working with Mexico to prevent them from bringing guns and drugs across our border, to fight human trafficking, and to improve public safety. How are you going to do that without ICE? Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? Was the con then, or is the con now? As someone who claims to champion minority communities, you know they are the ones most impacted by drug cartels and gangs coming through our porous border. Between 2017 and 2018, ICE seized more than 368,000 pounds of drugs and made almost 5,000 drug arrests. ICE made more than 1,700 arrests in gang investigations, including MS-13 members. More than 430 criminal arrests in child exploitation investigations, rescuing hundreds of child victims. And you want to oppose ICE? You call them like KKK? If you don't like a law, Kamala, there's a process to change it. And here's the rub. You can change it. As a United States Senator, work within the framework of the exalted position to which you were elected. Sponsor a bill, get support for the bill, and get it passed. Don't gin up people into a frenzy, suggesting ICE is like the KKK with images of burning crosses and lynchings of innocent African Americans. Likening it to innocent Mexicans and Central Americans. You, of all people, should understand the anger and hate that conjures up. As a woman who's half African American, you, of all people, should understand the history and the role of the KKK played through the Democrat Party. So let me see if I get this right. ICE should be eliminated because it scares people. people who have broken our laws to come here. Many have already exhibited violence along the way in Tijuana and Guatemala, mostly men demanding entrance as if they're entitled to be here. What you're doing is planting seeds of fear, resistance, and resentment against ICE among people who have no right to come here, who've already broken our laws to get here. And they're scared. People should be afraid when they violate our laws. The people, though, who should be afraid are innocent Americans at risk in sanctuary cities and states where illegals, who are also criminals, are given safe haven. Your con puts those American citizens in jeopardy. How about a little dose of reality, Kamala, and not your perception nonsense? Take a look at these pictures. Kate Steinle, Molly Tibbetts, Neeson Mickens, Kyla Cuevas, and the scores of American citizens killed by illegals. Your perception of ICE as a KKK is pure insanity. This is America. The law is the law. Respect it. Honor it. Fear it. Damn it, fear it. Any questions? And that's my open. If you like my opening statements, you'll love my new book, New York Times #1 bestseller, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. And now, with reaction to my opening statement and all the breaking news today, Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. Good evening, Kellyanne. Thanks for being here.
Washington.
I love Washington.
It loves you.
I'm not so sure, but thank you. All right, Kellyanne, what do you think of likening ICE to the KKK?
This is what happens when people have absolutely nothing substantive to offer aspirationally for their 2020 campaigns. They can't seem to figure out how to defeat Donald Trump in the Senate at the ballot box through his justice nominees like Brett Kavanaugh. And so they try to do it by having these viral moments, trying to embarrass and harass and harangue people who are under oath, just trying to report on the good work of, in this case, of the men and women of ICE. And what really galls me is she doesn't even source, it's perception. Where? On Twitter? Where? On one of these blue groups that are trying to fund you? Where? Among your group of friends? Source it, darn it. If he's under oath and she's not, she ought to at the very least have to say, here's where I heard the perception, here's a problem.
I don't care about perception.
No, we want reality, because the reality is that they interdict almost 500,000 pounds of drugs. They arrested almost 500 criminals. They're helping with the human trafficking,
sex
and
saving children who are being exploited. And she should know this. The woman was the Attorney General.
I don't want to spend too much time on her, and here's why. Okay. I work for the President of the United States, who, like the Vice President, Mike Pence, are the only two people guaranteed to be on the ballot in 2020, and the only ones truly still focused on 2018. They're trying through this lame duck session to actually get things passed, to try to get action on immigration or trade or the economy. Those who are running in 2020 really have nothing of substance to say, it seems. And if America didn't get enough of Kamala Harris during the Kavanaugh hearings, they can see what her tactics are. They showed no dignity and no integrity during the Kavanaugh hearings, trying to destroy this man and dehumanize him. And now here we are back. Instead of saying, Mr. Vitale, tell us what your agency does. Tell America. Here's an inflection point to inform America.
Her job is to trash anyone who's part of the administration. But let's talk about the Democrats. Now that they're running the House, how do you see it playing out?
So they're most likely to overreach. And I think some of them are so worried about that, Jeanine, that they will not commit their vote for speakership to Nancy Pelosi. They're worried that a vote for Nancy Pelosi looks like it's a vote for the past. She had that job for 2 terms before. They were unceremoniously defeated spectacularly defeated in 2010. She held that for 2 terms. She's a great, prodigious fundraiser, they say, but she also represents San Francisco. That's not the rest of the country. If the Democrats want to win back states in the presidential election that Donald Trump clobbered them in, like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, they need to reach into those areas for their leadership. So it's generational, it's ideological, but she doesn't have the votes right now for speakership. I just think that the people on the committees who have been been on the show since the Democrats won the House have been very careful to say, well, we're not going to only investigate, we will legislate. And when asked, what can you work on with President Trump,
how do you think, Kellyanne, how do you think they view this kind of left-wing progressive lunacy? Do they think that's what got them the House as opposed to gerrymandering and people retiring? Or do they think they have to move more to the middle?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. In other words, look at the 2020 field right now. If you showed all the pictures, it looks like a yearbook of a large public school. It's like 300 people running for president on the Democratic side. Why? Because A, they think it's so easy to win. B, they can't believe some of the others who are running. Oh boy, if he or she are running, I certainly should. But it's ideologically disparate, and yet they really all share the same opinion on abortion, on guns, on the tax cut, which none of them voted for, on deregulation. Not a single one of them voted for the omnibus last year, which gave our military, President Trump's budget gave the military the first pay raise in 9 years.
I know, that's
and the
pretty
$717 billion. So they've shown what they're against. I think if the Democrats overreach, they're going to have a problem. Show me, Jeanine, show me the data where there's an appetite in most of the places in this country.
Yeah, but you see, they can misinterpret and say it got us the House. All right, let me ask you one more thing. I love this, and so do most people, although we should be talking about the president. The palace intrigue. All right, John Kelly is going. This one is coming in. What's it like over there?
It's absolutely fine. I mean, I was with the president every single day this week until fairly late in the evening last night. Today, he was in California all day. I wanted to see the destruction, the devastation of the wildfires.
We're going to talk to Kevin McCarthy
firsthand. But the president is, this whole idea that he's fuming and he's isolated, it comes from people who couldn't get through the front door in the first place, or those who have been kicked out since. I'm absolutely convinced, because if you look at most of the sourcing, it says, source familiar, outside advisors, someone close to the White House, the guy at Starbucks down the street. So the president knows that. But he is so focused on his work. And look at what happened just this week. You had the governor's races finally called in Georgia and Florida. The Senate race in Florida, of course, is Rick Scott's. And why is that important? Because you're adding up the number of candidates for whom the president went and campaigned for, who actually prevailed. The governorships in places like Iowa,
we're gonna have,
Ohio, and Florida.
Some of them on.
Ron DeSantis, I think the first thing he's going to do is maybe get rid of the Snipes woman in Broward County. But this president, what he did this week? Look at his work. He awarded 7 medals of honor. He signed the cybersecurity into law. And very importantly, he had a veterans and military event where he went through the whole litany of all the success. The veterans love him, and the first responders, law enforcement, that Kamala Harris is insulting and denigrating
every day.
They feel more deeply respected and better resourced because of President Trump.
All right, Kellyanne Conway, thanks for being with us tonight. And joining me now by phone, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who actually was traveling with the president today, meeting with first responders and surveying the devastation and the tragic California wildfires. All right, good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, Judge. Thanks for having me.
Oh, all right. We're always happy to have you on. Congressman, talk to us about what you saw today with the president.
I will tell you, I've been with the president a lot of different places, a lot of disasters. He was at his finest today. We came out to California, this campfire up in Paradise. More than 12,000 homes destroyed, entire city, down to the ground. The firefighters fighting the fire, their houses burnt down during the time. You walked in, there was just a few buildings that were still standing. The firefighters told us they broke in. The people that couldn't get out of the city, they put them into these buildings, put the fire trucks around it, and fought the fire while it burned over the top of them to save the lives of the individuals there. This is the biggest loss California has ever had. More than 70 people have died in this fire. More than 1,000
and
are
many
still
missing. Right. And the president, I understand that, that he was with a lot of Democrats. He's making it clear that he has tried to work with the Democrats. Their philosophy, of course, obstruct, resist. Well, what was it like with the Democrats there in California today and the president?
You know what amazing? This president was the statesman. Here he comes and he lands, and we have Governor Brown and Governor-elect Newsom with us. It was the four of us in the car driving, talking, seeing ways that we can work together. And I listened to Governor-elect Newsom and Governor Brown thanking this president by how fast he signed to declare a disaster so the federal funds can be there, working to make sure we can rebuild it. You wouldn't know there was a problem between the two of us because this president put the politics aside because the people of California just went through one of the worst scenarios we could find. This fire is still burning. He showed the leadership of why he is the president.
All right, Congressman, I want to ask you something. That I'm going to. There is a statement that the president made. I'm going to read it because we don't have much time. The president said, "We serve in a divided government in a divided country. Our goal is to unite us back together again." I believe, actually, I think that's your statement.
That was my quote. Yes.
Okay, good.
What I found is, Here we are after this election. Yes, divided with the Democrats, and now with the Republicans still having the House. Having the Senate. You got a divided nation, and here we had a tragic situation. I just watched this president unite people that have difference of opinion because the first thing we are all Americans. And the one thing I look for in my leaders, especially in a time of need, is to show the statesmanship that I watched this president do today. And not only did he deal with these fires, he went and dealt with the recent shooting, meeting some of the families, meeting the first responders. And the way this president reacts and the way the first responders react to this president because of the respect he gives them, I tell you, it is a moving situation if you've ever been in it to see it.
And you know what's amazing, Congressman, is that his energy is unending. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. He literally goes 7 days a week around the clock. Congressman, go ahead, add it. Go ahead.
I've never seen a man work this way. We were out taking off at Andrews like at 6 o'clock this morning. He flies across the country. He meets with people. He flies down to Malibu. He goes and sees the victims of a shooting and his compassion of where it is, and now he's going to get back up and go fly back across the country because the country needed him, and he continues to work to make that happen.
That's right. All right. Congressman McCarthy, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, and Governor-elect Ron DeSantis, fresh off his opponent's concession, joins me live in a Justice exclusive coming up. But first, Congressman Steve Scalise here to talk Trump, the new Congress, and his amazing personal story. My next guest nearly lost his life last summer when a gunman opened fire at the Republican congressional baseball team's practice. After months of surgeries and intensive rehab, he fought his way back and returned to Congress. Louisiana Congressman and author of the new book, Back in the Game, Steve Scalise joins me now in a Justice exclusive. Well, Congressman, first of all, welcome to Justice.
Thank you, Judge. Great to be with you.
Good. Well, we're thrilled to have you on tonight. You know, we'll get to your book a little later, but, you know, now you are in the next session of Congress, you're going to be holding a different position. How do you see things playing out in the next congressional session?
Well, you know, we still are going to fight for the things that we believe are going to get this country back on track. We're already seeing such a great economy because we worked with President Trump to cut taxes for every single American. And if you're a hardworking family out there seeing more money in your paycheck, you sure don't want to see Nancy Pelosi take that away. So, you know, I want to see us make sure that we fight to protect the gains that we've made, keep this economy growing, and keep fighting for the hardworking people who elected us.
All right. And, you know, when the Democrats were the minority, Congressman, I mean, their whole idea was obstruct, resist, don't do anything. Even when it came to things like tax reform, tax cuts for the American people, they obstructed and resisted. I mean, what makes you think that you should go back and work with them, given what they accomplished or did to you when you were the whip?
Well, you know, you've seen a lot of what Nancy Pelosi's been talking about, and a lot of her liberal lieutenants, they're talking about exactly that right now, about more obstruction, about trying to just harass and subpoena and maybe even impeach the president. But, Judge, when I was out in a lot of those swing districts, the districts that went from Republican to Democrat that ultimately flipped the House, those candidates were not talking about harassing the president. They were talking about a lot of the things that we worked on. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Are they going to join up with Nancy Pelosi after their election and be a part of that resist movement? If so, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a real tough year for them in 2020 because that's not what they were elected on. But we're going to fight to defend the gains we made. And if they want to harass the administration and the president, we're going to be stopping them using every tool we have. But in the end, that's going to be Nancy Pelosi's decision to see which way she wants to go. But we're going to be there to fight her if she goes the wrong way or tries to reverse any gains we made.
Congressman, and what do you think about the Florida recount and all the hoopla down there in Broward and Palm Beach counties? I mean, finding all of these ballots after 30 minutes after the election and trying to change the reality of those declared the winners. Of course, now Florida-elect Governor Ron DeSantis is going to join us in a few minutes. But, you know, the way they play seems to be rather different from the way you guys play. They fight to win, as Mark Elias said so clearly. What do we fight to do?
Well, Judge, they don't just fight to win. They literally will go around the rules. And what you're seeing right now, they're not trying to count every vote. You know, they use that mantra. But if you voted legally in Florida and then all of a sudden 10,000 votes just show up from under somebody's mattress, and it just so happens to be for a candidate different than the one you voted for, then they're trying to steal your vote. And voter theft is something that is against the law. And so obviously both teams have attorneys down there, as they should, to try to stop theft from occurring. But it's just surprising when you see the same county, Broward County, they've had a history of not being able to get this right. But I'm glad Ron DeSantis is down there with his team. Matt Gaetz and I talked a lot about this, what he's doing to make sure the law is being followed. So we have our own folks making sure that they're not going to steal this election.
And Brenda Snipes says, you know, the court has no role in this right now. I mean, you know, you got to wonder about respect for the law. But I want to move on to your book. In your book, you talk about what happened to you. Was there ever a period of time, Congressman, when you said, you know what, I got shot. I almost died several times as a result of this injury. Did you ever think about not coming back and just, you know, hanging up a shingle somewhere and doing something else?
Well, I mean, Judge, you know, clearly the opportunities would have been there. But I love this country. I love the job that I have, the ability that I have to work with this president to get this country back on track. And, you know, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to recover from my injuries, and that would have been the only thing that would have kept me back. But it was one of the things that motivated me to fight to get back. And I talk about this a lot in the book. And Back in the Game, the book I wrote about the miracles that happened along the way, the heroes that saved my life and helped me to be able to recover, but just what the motivations were, why I wanted to fight so hard to get back, to be able to be a part of some of the things that we were able to do historically over this last year, including the tax cut bill. Which was just something special to work on.
Paradise off the map is now by far the deadliest wildfire in California history. The sheriff says there are still nearly 1,300 people missing. Democrats nabbing another House seat in Southern California. Democrat Gil Cisneros beating Republican State Assemblywoman Young Kim for the seat held by Republican Representative Ed Royce, who is retiring at the end of the year. Republicans now have lost all the seats in Orange County, and Democrats will control 45 of the state's 53 seats in the next Congress. I'm Lauren Blanchard. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
Breaking tonight, a historic night for our next guest. Florida Governor-elect Ron DeSantis joins me now in his first interview since his opponent, Andrew Gillum, conceded after the recount. All right, good evening, Governor-elect DeSantis. How does that sound?
Good evening, Judge. Well, you know, I didn't think I'd get reelected this quickly. You know, we did this last week, and now here we are again, so whatever works.
Okay. Well, you're right. 11 days ago, you were declared the winner, something like 80,000 votes. And then, oh, lo and behold, 100,000 votes, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 100,000 votes are found. What is going on in Florida?
Well, yeah, you had two counties, Broward and Palm Beach County. These ballots started appearing that were not initially logged. Because, you know, we track every vote, Judge. I mean, that's just how we do these elections now. And so it started to, they were all real big Democrat margins. And so Rick Scott's margin went down a lot. My margin started going down. Now, I was never really in danger of losing because my margin was big enough. But what it did do was, at least in my case, it triggered this requirement to run the ballots through the machines again. So all the counties did this all through the machines, and it basically didn't change anything. It was the same as it was. And so, you know, I'm fortunate that this is behind us. And I've been working hard since election night to do the transition. We're going to put good people in the administration. We got a good agenda. But now I can go forward without having to worry about this.
Let's look forward to 2020. Florida is going to play a very important role. Are you going to fire this Brenda Snipes? I mean, you know, the lawsuit that was brought against her, you know, the judge actually referenced what is allowed in terms of, you know, someone losing their job for doing that kind of thing. I mean, he laid the groundwork for that kind of thing as being appropriate.
I don't think there's any question that there was a flagrant violation of the law. I mean, some of these votes that were counted late, a day or two after the election, were supposedly cast during early voting, and they were just never reported as having been cast. And we have a lot of transparency and legal requirements precisely because that's what confers legitimacy to these results. Brenda Snipes obviously didn't follow that, but this isn't the first time. I mean, 2 years ago, she was reprimanded by a federal court. She had destroyed ballots illegally in a race involving Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And so I think the state's interest in this is, people say, oh, Florida's got all these problems. Judge, Florida as a whole doesn't have the problems. I mean, we have 67 counties, and 65 of them were able to do it well. You have Broward and you have Palm Beach. You know, Miami-Dade is more populous than Broward. They didn't have a single problem. It's a Democrat county. Bay County, which got hit by Hurricane Michael, they had all their results done. And so it's really Broward and Palm Beach, and I think they've tarnished the image of the state.
You're going to let this woman go?
Well, I'm going to take office on January 8th, and, you know, I ran on accountability, and so I urge all your voters to follow my administration closely when I get in.
Okay, well, we're going to follow that, and hopefully you're going to come back. Listen, let's just talk, before I talk about 2020, which I want to end with. You know, you were all over the email scandal and all of that stuff with the Russian hoax and the Russian collusion. You going to miss that stuff when you go to Florida?
Well, you know, obviously I didn't know whether we'd be in the majority or minority, but the fact that we're in the minority, I mean, you know, quite frankly, I think it's going to be tough in the House. I think a lot of the work we were doing, unfortunately, is going to come to an end when the new Congress convenes, because I think the Democrats, they're not going to want to hold anybody accountable for any of this stuff. Hopefully in the Senate, they will take over some of that and bring some accountability. So I'm glad I am where I am. I think I can do a lot more for Florida as governor.
Developing tonight with the Florida race for governor over and the caravan still coming. Here with reaction to that and more is Dana Lash. Good evening, Dana. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good to see you, Judge Jeanine, as always.
Good to have you on. You know, we just had Governor-elect Ron DeSantis on, and he was talking about some of the problems that Florida had in the so-called recount that apparently wasn't necessary because he won again, and Gillum conceded again. Yeah. What's your take on what's going on in Florida?
I thought it was like a clown show. I don't know how else to describe it. I had no idea what I was watching here. And, you know, I read his name escapes me, but the one judge who was determining if this recount was going to go forward, and he was saying, look, this is an embarrassment every single time. Every election this happens, we have to get it right. Brenda Snipes has to go. I mean, I think that's been universally acknowledged at this particular point. Broward needs to get it together, that's for sure. But DeSantis won. He was always going to win, because his policies appealed to Floridians. That only made sense. Same with Scott. So the right conclusion finally took place and was rightfully acknowledged.
Well, and you know, the amazing part of it all is that, you know, we watched this up close and personal. It was a repeat of what had happened over so many years. But, you know, I want to move on and I'd like to talk about the caravan, and there is a statement here that we have from a caravan member that I want you to react to, where the caravan member, I believe his name is Henry Salinas. He says it's going to be all against one against all of Central America against one, and one against Central America, all against Trump, Trump against all. All right, this is someone who is violating our laws to come and live in this country and reap the benefits of being an American, breaking our laws to get here. I mean, what's your take on this caravan?
I find it interesting, this gentleman's statement, but yet the condemnation that came from some in the chattering class whenever anyone would use the word invasion. I want them to reconcile those two things and then see how that turns out. But I don't understand why this is about President Trump. It seems weird that someone would say this when they're coming to the United States to seek asylum, especially after rejecting the asylum and benefits that were offered by Mexico, which makes myself and a lot of other people legitimately wonder whether this is about asylum or whether it's about standing and making a point about this administration. But to that point, the idea that somehow wanting individuals to enter legally and orderly. I mean, we just saw Billy Idol do it the other day, go through his naturalization ceremony. For crying out loud, if Billy Idol can do it, anybody can do it. To somehow misrepresent that as you hate all immigration is disingenuous. It's intellectually fraudulent. And I'm so tired of seeing that argument from so many people on the left, so many elected Democrats. I really want to know, Judge, I want to know where Democrats stand on immigration policy in the Trump administration. Are they fine with letting all of these individuals in?
Well, I'll tell you what we do know is that Kamala Harris, who sees herself as a presidential candidate, made it perfectly clear she thinks that ICE should be abolished. And the perception that she's planting the seed, of course, is that ICE is akin to the KKK. What do you think of that from someone who used to prosecute and enforce the law?
I thought it was embarrassingly uninformed, considering that over half of border agents, over half of these individuals are Hispanic or Latino. I have been to the border many times. I live in Texas. This is a huge issue in Texas. And I've heard all of these individuals really laugh at remarks like this, because she hasn't been the first person to sort of suggest that the motives of these individuals isn't that they're doing their jobs and they're enforcing law. It's that they're somehow racist. They laugh. These Hispanic and Latino law enforcement officers, these people who are border agents, people who are in ICE, they all laugh at this idea. And it's also pretty offensive for someone like Kamala Harris to say this, because to make that comparison, you have to do a leap of logic and suggest that somehow a skin color is akin to breaking the law. I don't really think that she thought this argument out all the way. But the bottom line is that these individuals, I mean, and Judge, I know you've talked about this on your show, they serve their communities, they put their lives on the line, they do a great job.